While there is no doubt some soul searching going on right now in parts of the Chicago area Muslim community. That's after a prominent conservative Muslim scholar was accused of sexually abusing several women at the Islamic school he founded in Elgin. Earlier this week, Mohammed Abdullah Salim was charged with one count of criminal sexual abuse. He's also the subject of a lawsuit by 4 of the women. The women started coming forward with the help of an organization called Heart, Women and Girls. It's an advocacy group that promotes the reproductive health and mental well-being of faith-based communities through culturally sensitive health information and programming. Here to help us make sense of how this all unfolded, the stigma against victims of sexual abuse in the Muslim community, and how she works to break the silence is the organization's co-founder and executive director, Nadiah Mohajir. Hi there.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. You know, I was really curious when I was reading about the story. There was the feeling that the women were really afraid to come forward. I guess that's not so unusual, but I was struck by the notion that it's not easy in parts of the Muslim community for women to talk about these issues. Can you tell us why that is?
Yeah. So, Tony, first I want to clarify that it's not easy cross-culturally, right? Like, as you know, it's very difficult as a sexual violence survivor to come forward. It's often a horrible violation of your emotional and physical and personal safety. And so that inherently makes it hard to come forward. That being said, we do have some unique challenges in the Muslim community. Some of the emphasis that the faith puts on modesty and purity and privacy, which are very, very noble characteristics and characteristics that I value very deeply, can also at times encourage silence and shame around these issues.
So how does the organization deal with that, provide opportunities for women, and not just talking about, I guess, sexual abuse, but sexuality in general?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Heart, Women and Girls actually it facilitates safe spaces so that we can begin having conversations about all issues pertaining to sexual health in a way that is free of blame and shame and in a way that's empowering and not disempowering to women. So regardless of, what the question is that they have or what, personal issue they're, dealing with in their own lives, we want to be able to empower them so that they feel comfortable and safe seeking the resources that they need to, make the best decision for their own health.
Well, what are some of the concerns? Can you talk about a little bit about what the women that you deal with come forward with, what they talk about in this safe space?
Sure. It's a variety of things. It's as simple as, we just want to better understand our, female anatomy and, the contraceptive options that are available to us, to, more complex issues like sexual violence and intimacy, issues with in their marriages. And, it's a variety of different things depending on which audience you're working with.
You mentioned blame and shame, and the women from this particular community, I understand it's a conservative Muslim community, expressed fear that they would be considered unmarriageable if they came forward about their alleged abuse. Where does that idea come from, and how do you get past that?
Yeah, so, there is a strong emphasis on purity and abstinence in Islam, and I totally sign on to that. I think it's a great and noble characteristic. But what we have to remember is that despite the emphasis on purity and abstinence, the faith actually does not. That emphasis should not supersede one's personal safety. And so if it's compromising your personal safety, that goes down the drain, and you have to speak up about, something that has been a crime that has been committed against you. So, but it is a real concern in the community, in the sense that, there are people who are concerned if they are victims of sexual violence that perhaps the community will outcast them and, they may not have as many prospects to be married to.
We We are talking with Nadiah Mohajir. She is the co-founder and executive director of Heart Women and Girls, an organization that promotes the reproductive health and mental well-being of faith-based communities through culturally sensitive health information and programming. This is in relation to the sex abuse charges against a scholar in the Muslim community. I'm wondering, is this a generational thing? The idea of shame and blame. Are we seeing more younger Muslim women move away from that, or are they being tied to it because of an older generation?
I think it's a combination of both. I think, in every community you'll have the group of people that are moving forward and becoming more open to having these conversations. And then there are others who, feel like they need to, cling on to some of their parents' generation. I think it's both.
What about any pushback that has occurred over this ongoing incident? Has it been generational? Has it been divided among the sexes?
I think there's both pushback and there's a lot of support as well. I mean, as with any case of sexual violence, it's important to note that there will always be people who push back, either because they support the perpetrator, or they don't believe the allegations, or they just don't understand sexual violence as a movement in general. But there's also a ton of support across generations, across genders, for the victims, for the work that Heart is doing to support the victims, for the chaplain that was supporting the victims. And so I think that is also something that is, there's a various numerous responses to this.
Nadiah, I would imagine in the Muslim community, in the Muslim faith, like any faith, there are levels of devotion, right? So, and I'm wondering, do you come across any, women expressing peer pressure? Perhaps there are less devout Muslim women who are, saying, hey, don't worry about this when it comes to sex. How does that play out?
No, I think that, again, it's important to note that the Muslim community is very diverse when it comes to practice and observance. And I don't want to categorize and say only the conservatives are pushing back or only the progressives are supporting. I do think that it is very just dependent on the community that you come from and, your individual perspective. I have gotten, the victims, and I have gotten support from a lot of conservative, observant people, and we've gotten a lot of pushback as well, from, perhaps progressive people. So I think it just depends on, the individual person and how they're processing this news in particular.
I guess I was talking more general among female Muslims and a level of devotion. And if there's any peer pressure, if you hear from one young Muslim girl who's saying, look, I'm feeling peer pressure to, engage in sex. Do you come across that, and how do you deal with that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And it's important to note that we live in a hypersexualized society, right? So it's all over. They're getting messages when they go to school, when they watch TV, when they listen to music to engage in sex. And that is actually a very real concern for a lot of the young people that we work with. And that's what I meant about, reclaiming some of these terms like abstinence and like modesty and reframing them in a way that's empowering for them and doesn't make them feel resentful for the values that they want to uphold.
Nadiah Mohajir is the co-founder and executive director of Heart Women and Girls, an advocacy group that promotes the reproductive health and mental well-being of faith-based communities through culturally sensitive health information and programming. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me, Tony.